Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the From the Booth podcast. My name is Mike. In today's episode, we're going to be breaking down conference championship weekend, and then we're also going to talk about some of the coaching news and some of the other news that's going around in the NFL world. But before we get into any of that, please make sure that if you're not already, you subscribe to the channel or follow if you're listening on a podcast platform so you don't miss future episodes. As I've said before, I'm going to try to have at least 2 podcast episodes out a week on all platforms. And then I'm going to try to have at least 2 YouTube videos out a week on YouTube specifically. So if you don't want to miss anything, and if you like what you've seen so far, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything else. Now let's get right into the conference championship games. Let's start with the 49ers and the Eagles game, the first game of the slate. To be honest, this one was kind of a stinker. I was really excited for this game. I thought this was the 2 best teams in the NFC throughout the whole year. I was very excited for this good, close matchup. The 49ers have been steamrolling people all year. The Eagles have been steamrolling people all year. It was big on big, and I was excited to see who came out on top and how good the game was. But unfortunately, that's really not how it went. The Eagles did the steamrolling today, 31-7, advancing to their second Super Bowl in 6 years with a different coach and a different quarterback, which, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have proof of this, but if I'm not mistaken, that has to be the first time in league history that that's happened with both a different coach and different quarterback for the same team to be in a Super Bowl, like less than 7-8 years apart, which is pretty crazy, to be honest. I think that, you look at the game and the big story is about Brock Purdy. Before that happened, the Eagles went down the field, obviously, on that first drive. They really set the tone. They showed their balls and they went for it on that fourth down. Devontae Smith made that great catch. He had that great catch, which honestly, it was a fantastic job reeling it in with the one hand, but I don't believe he survived the ground. But I mean, good for him to, get to the line and hurry up and hurry up and hurry up and let the Eagles run that other play so that San Francisco couldn't challenge or that the booth couldn't overturn it. I think that was one of Kyle Shanahan's mistakes in this game is that he didn't challenge that sooner. Typically, when a receiver gets up super fast and tries to, get the ball to the line and get the ball spiked or get the ball snapped really quick, when it's not like a 2-minute drill or an end of the half type of deal, typically it's not a good sign for the offense. That means he didn't catch it. So if I was Kyle Shanahan, I would have at least called a timeout, because we all know timeouts in the first half are significantly less valuable than timeouts in the second half, or I would have thrown a challenge flag, whatever. But I don't think if that was reviewed, it would have been called a catch. But regardless, they get it. They go on the field. They punch it in. Cool. Philly sets the tone early 7-0. Next drive of the game, Brock Purdy gets hit. His elbow gets hit when he's throwing. His elbow gets almost like hit in by Hassan Reddick, fumbles the ball, picked up by the Eagles. And honestly, that did it for the 49ers. And I will say, even before that, on the first Eagles drive, Fred Warner got hurt. Obviously, Fred Warner came back in the game, but he got hurt. Nick Bosa got hurt on like a freak punt return situation. That was really weird. And then obviously Brock Purdy got hurt. So having those 3 guys get hurt for the Niners was critical, and it was part of the reason why they lost. But Purdy getting hurt. I mean, the rest of the game, the Niners kind of rolled with Josh Johnson, and then Josh Johnson got hurt, and then they said, "Well, shit, what do we do?" They kind of put Purdy back in the game out of emergency. But it was very evident, at least to me, it was very evident he could not throw the ball, like, at all. He threw little dinky dunky screens. And when you're down big in a playoff game, you need more than that. And I'm not blaming Brock Purdy. I'm saying that I think the 49ers had basically 0 options. They were quite literally had 4 injured quarterbacks, which is unprecedented. That's just insanity. That's just all-time terrible luck. They had 4 injured quarterbacks. And so what can you do in that situation, really? I did see that they tried to put in Christian McCaffrey, which we'll touch on a little bit later, but I kind of want to go over some stats of the game. I see a lot of 49ers fans saying that the only reason they lost was Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy decided the game and da 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 da, which I won't disagree hurt the 49ers. However, I will say that they lost for many more reasons. First of all, the Niners were outgained 269 to 164. The Niners had 3 turnovers, Philly had 0. The Niners had 22 and a half minutes of possession time. The Eagles had 37 and a half. The Niners had 11 first downs to Philly's 25. This is the big one right here. The 49ers committed 11 penalties for 81 yards. Philly only had 4 for 34 yards. And then the 49ers didn't really get to Jalen Hurts as much as Philly got to Josh Johnson and Brock Purdy. So, yes, obviously Purdy getting hurt sucked for the 49ers, but I would venture to say the Eagles probably still would have won regardless. Jalen Hurts wasn't very productive today. A.J. Brown wasn't very productive today, and they still scored 31 points. Like that's just the Eagles on a, I wouldn't even call it an off night, but on a non-superstar night from their quarterback, they still put up 31 points and won by 3 scores. It's just incredible. So unfortunately, 49ers, wasn't your day. Obviously, you guys had some terrible injury luck, but the Eagles have been, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL all year. And to see them in the Super Bowl is no surprise to me. I actually predicted this earlier in the year. I will take a quick second. I have no proof of this. I have no, digital footprint of this. But my preseason prediction for the Super Bowl was the Eagles and the Chiefs. I was right on that. Obviously, it's easy to say now. And now that I'm making content, you guys will see my predictions for next year. So I don't have to, you don't have to just trust me for the next Super Bowl if I predict it correctly. But the Eagles Chiefs was my Super Bowl prediction in the preseason. I will say 2 more things about this game, or 2 more things about the 49ers before we kind of talk about the Eagles. I've seen a lot of people criticizing Kyle Shanahan in this game, and I've seen a lot of people talk about the quarterback situation in San Francisco. Let me first start with Shanahan. I don't put as much blame on Shanahan as I think some people do. Now, would I have liked to see a little bit more creativity from the offense? Yes. Would I have liked to seen, maybe some wildcat, maybe some, double backfield, some read option with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel? Yes, I would have. But really think about it. Would it have mattered? Like, would it have mattered? Josh Johnson was awful in this game. I think there's no debate about that. Basically gifted the Eagles a free touchdown by just dropping that snap. What does Kyle Shanahan do about that, right? I mean, like the guy's a professional quarterback. He couldn't handle a snap. That's not Shanahan's fault. I think when you're down to Josh Johnson in a playoff game, especially against a team like the Eagles. Now, if this was maybe the wild card round and you're playing against a shit team, okay, cool. Maybe you can make it work. But I don't think Kyle Shanahan really could have done anything to win this game with Josh Johnson or Christian McCaffrey or Kyle Juszczyk at quarterback. He was put in an impossible spot, and I still think he's a great coach. I still think he's a fantastic coach, but this spot was just an impossible one with the Eagles defense being as good as it was, and there really was nothing he could do, in my opinion. And another thing I'll say is I think it's interesting every single year, and this is a pattern literally every single year in San Francisco for Kyle Shanahan, his quarterback play. It always bites him. Whether it's, Jimmy at times has looked fine, cool. Jimmy missed the throws in the Super Bowl. Jimmy has been, statistically speaking, one of the worst playoff quarterbacks ever. Brock Purdy has been doing good this year. Okay, Brock Purdy gets injured in the NFC Championship game. You thought Trey Lance was going to be something. Trey Lance broke his ankle. It's either terrible injury luck or it's just bad play at the worst time. And the 49ers, if they can get a quarterback, like a legit good star quarterback, they'll be unstoppable. But I want to go ahead and transition to the Eagles and talk about them for a second. Obviously, big props to the Eagles organization, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie. Those guys, they have built another winning culture in Philadelphia. Obviously, they still have some of the same players from the 2017 Super Bowl, but they've built another winning culture with a different identity, with a different offense, with different coordinators, different head coach. So big props to those guys. They definitely know what they're doing. I just want to say a few things. Jalen Hurts is that guy. He's that guy, confirmed. I remember the dialogue during this offseason was oh yeah, well the Eagles are stacked now, but is Jalen Hurts going to hold them back? Well, Jalen Hurts isn't a franchise quarterback, and da 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 da. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Jalen Hurts is that guy. He's proven he's been that guy. You look at the pattern of Jalen Hurts over his career. Every single year, he has gotten better. Like there's been a drastic improvement in Jalen Hurts' quarterback play every single year. You look at his years at Bama. Okay, Jalen Hurts was good, but he lacked a little bit as a passer. That's a fair statement. He did. There's a reason he was benched in the national championship game. Which, by the way, the dude was benched in a national championship game, kept his head high. Next season, got reinserted into the lineup during the SEC championship game, proved he was ready, won the game for Alabama that year. Then the year after, transfers to Oklahoma, damn near wins the Heisman Trophy, does great, goes into the NFL, isn't a first round pick because he can't throw in his pocket. He's not going to be a drop back passer and all that, whatever. Goes in the second round to the Eagles, who smartly understood that he was a steal in that round. And then, his rookie year, like most rookie years, wasn't the best. Okay, next year made a great improvement, but still wasn't the superstar that he is right now. Let's not forget, guys. He put up a stinker in the playoffs last year. Like he did. He put up a stinker. He wasn't ready last year, but I understood, and like a lot of people who have been watching Jalen Hurts' career understood, he's gonna get better. He's gonna bust his ass in the offseason. He's gonna hit the film room. He's gonna hit the weight room. Not that he needs to hit the weight room anymore, but he's gonna do everything he can. And then this year, legitimately would have won MVP if he hadn't missed those two games. Has been the best player in the NFL this year, in my opinion, and has proven in the two playoff games he's played that the moment is not too big for him. So big congratulations to Jalen Hurts. I love Jalen. You guys know I'm a huge Jalen Hurts fan. Love Jalen Hurts. He's my guy. He is the epitome of hard work, adversity, overcoming everything. Like I love Jalen Hurts, honestly. Now, speaking of overcoming doubt, let's talk about Nick Sirianni, the head coach for the Eagles, who, to be honest with you, when he was hired, exactly. So yesterday was Sunday. I'm recording this on Monday morning. Yesterday was Sunday. It was the 29th. His opening press conference was exactly 2 years before that NFC Championship game. It was exactly 2 years. So it was the 29th of 2021. And if you guys remember during that press conference, he was stuttering and he was, I don't want to say tripping over his words, but I mean, you could tell like this was, it was a big moment. And I remember he was getting mocked. Everybody was mocking him, like, oh, look at this guy. Oh, he can't be an NFL coach, da 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 da. And 2 years later, he took his team to the Super Bowl. That's incredible. I mean, we have to give our props to Nick Sirianni. I don't think that obviously I think Jalen Hurts is great. I've just talked about it, but I don't think that the Eagles are where they're at without Nick Sirianni and his leadership and his energy and his passion, which some people have a problem with. I have zero problem with my head coach getting excited, screaming on the sidelines. I think that's a great thing. I think the guys love it, that it shows that he's invested, that he's into it. This is his life, this is his passion. So love that. But yeah, Nick Sirianni's taking the Eagles to the Super Bowl. Big props to him. Very, very excited to see what the Eagles can do. Hopefully, the Eagles and the Chiefs will have a great game in the Super Bowl, and I look forward to it in a few weeks. Well, sorry if I just spoiled that for you, but the Chiefs did end up beating the Bengals 23-20 in the AFC Championship game. Significantly better game than the Eagles and Niners game. This game was lived up to what it was propped up to be. So I think before we kind of get into the game, we do have to talk about a lot of the controversy before the game. And by controversy, I mean the arrogance of the Cincinnati Bengals. So this all started, he had the mic'd up moment last week in Buffalo where the Bengals players were calling it Burrowhead Stadium. And that's because obviously the Bengals won last year, the AFC Championship game in Arrowhead Stadium. But the Bengals had also been, with Joe Burrow, had also been 3-0 against the Chiefs. So to this point, Joe Burrow was, had the best of Patrick Mahomes. So there was the whole Burrowhead mantra, da-da-da. And I kind of had this philosophy in sports, and I think this goes for just life in general. It's a phrase that I think any person in a situation like this should live by. And it's called don't poke the bear. Don't poke the bear. Don't give people extra motivation to beat you. Don't give people a reason to work harder against you. That's never a good idea. Never a good idea, especially with a team like the Chiefs and a quarterback like Mahomes, never a good idea to give them extra bulletin board material. So the Bengals players all week were very arrogant. You had Eli Apple, who I despise, talking all that shit on Twitter, da 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 da, right? Whatever. You had the freaking mayor of Cincinnati take the fake paternity test. Oh, is Joe Burrow Mahomes' dad? You can look that up on Twitter. It's actually insane that he did that. That's just whatever. Um, but yeah, just a lot of arrogance by the Bengals. And and to their credit, have they backed up a lot of their talk this year? Yes, they have. They've been one of the best teams. But talk your shit after you win the Super Bowl. Talk your shit after you win the Super Bowl, okay? Don't say nothing before that. You wanna win the Super Bowl in February. You got 6, 7 months until the next season. Talk all you want. But to talk before the AFC Championship game against a team that you barely beat last year and didn't even win the Super Bowl last year, it's kind of ballsy. I'll be honest. And then the other storyline going into the game was Mahomes and Travis Kelce's injuries. Mahomes obviously had the high ankle sprain that he suffered in the Jaguars game. How much was that going to limit him? How affected would his mobility be? And then Travis Kelce was a late add to the injury report with back spasms on, I believe, Thursday or Friday, and it was legitimately questionable if he was going to play. But we all knew he was going to play. Let's be honest here. Additionally, the Chiefs had some injury problems at receiver. Kadarius Toney got banged up. Some of Mahomes' other targets were banged up. But, one of the guys that stepped up definitely in the AFC Championship game was MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. 6 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. That's big numbers. You need a guy to step up like that and have a big game in the AFC Championship game. Speaking of guys stepping up, I mean, was there any doubt that Mahomes wasn't going to ball out? 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, played great, made play after play after play. You could tell that the ankle was bothering him and that it did limit his mobility a little bit. But Mahomes, he's that guy. Mahomes is Superman. He's not going to let a high ankle sprain get in the way of him and going to another Super Bowl. So the Chiefs obviously, or I'm sorry, he was obviously going to play, and he was obviously going to play his best because the Super Bowl was on the line. Additionally, again, you're talking about, oh, Burrowhead. There's just that extra added motivation, which why the Bengals did that still is baffling to me. On the flip side, Joe Burrow, not as good, 270 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Not a terrible game by any sense, and I do think he played a little bit better than the numbers indicate, but those 2 interceptions were killer. Those were, in my opinion, the difference of the game. Like I said, this game was really back and forth. As you could tell, the game was close. There were a lot of times when I thought the Chiefs had it. There were a lot of times when I thought the Bengals had it. Back and forth, back and forth. This was the game that I thought, the NFC Championship would be a good back and forth match. But that's just not how it happened. But again, I did have an AFC Championship game, so we did get one really good conference battle. As I thought, the Chiefs kind of jumped out to an early lead. I believe they had a 7-point lead at halftime. And they were cooking for a little bit. And you kind of knew at halftime that the Bengals were going to adjust and that they were going to come out in the second half looking better. I mean, in the first half, the Chiefs defensive line killed them. Like they were killing them. I think they had 4 or 5 sacks just in the first half alone. So the Bengals definitely need to do some adjusting, and they did. They definitely did. They adjusted their offensive scheme. Joe Burrow, was able to get some passes out, to get some big completions on the field, and everything like that. But I do want to talk about the difference in the game. It was turnovers and penalties. For the Bengals had 3 turnovers. Chiefs only had 1 on that weird kind of Patrick Mahomes fumble thing. And like I said, the Bengals had 3 turnovers, 2 of Joe Burrow's interceptions. It's really hard to beat Kansas City in the playoffs when you have 2 more turnovers than them. You can't give them 2 more possessions. That's what the Bengals did. But I think the real kicker is the penalties for Cincinnati. Extending Kansas City drives, extending their momentum that they had built up. I mean, that 3rd and 9 sequence at the end of the game was insane. You had people saying that it was rigged, whatever. But 9 penalties for 71 yards. I mean, we can sit here and blame the refs if we want, but 9 penalties. I mean, that's a lot of penalties. That's a lot of penalties. That's a lot of yards. If you'll notice, as I've said in the segment about the NFC Championship game, both the Bengals and 49ers both had significantly more penalties than the both had significantly more penalties and two or more turnovers than the other team. I mean, that's not winning football. That's not winning football to have more turnovers, more penalties, right? So that's part of the reason why the Bengals and the 49ers ended up losing. But I would be remiss to not mention the biggest penalty of the season, the play where Patrick Mahomes was running out of bounds, looked like he was, just going to get a few more yards, and then gets pushed, 15-yard penalty. The Bengals guy was obviously distraught, very upset. Bengals get I'm sorry, Cincinnati. Pause. Um, the Chiefs get an additional 15 yards. Harrison Buckner nails the field goal. Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. There's just a few seconds left after that. Sometimes games just come down to that. And I see a lot of people saying that, oh, refs shouldn't decide the game. Well, the ref didn't decide the game. I think that linebacker decided the game. And, you can't be stupid in big spots. And that was a stupid penalty. When that happens, if you're running by Mahomes, you put your hands up, you try not to bump into him, and you don't do nothing. You don't push him. I mean, we can all be honest and say that the league is an offensive league. The penalties are almost always going to favor the offensive player, especially a face of the league like Mahomes. You have to know that. Am I saying the penalty was maybe ticky-tacky? You could argue, but at the same time, you have to have enough smarts to know just, hey, hands off, man. Don't touch him. Don't do nothing. Nothing good was going to come from you pushing him. Nothing good was going to happen. Maybe you prevent him getting a yard, right? It's not worth the 15 yards that you're going to give up by getting that penalty. So just a dumb move, honestly. I mean, I'm not gonna kill the guy. He was very distraught about it, so I'm not gonna dig his grave even more. You had people saying the NFL's rigged, like I said on Twitter, and that happens all the time. I don't really put much stock into that at all. But I will say, going to the Chiefs now. I'm sorry, going to the Bengals now. Joe Burrow and the Bengals have proven by their 3-1 record and playing every game close that they are a competent foil to the Chiefs. We're all talking about, the Chiefs going to run the AFC or run the AFC. They're going to have to get past the Bengals every year. And not that I'm saying the Bengals are better, that the Joe Burrow is better, but they're not backing down. Like they'll play the Chiefs tough. So I think Burrow and Mahomes is going to be a great matchup, a great quarterback matchup in the AFC going forward for a long time. Very excited to see how that goes. Hopefully Burrow gets a Super Bowl as well. I would like to see Joe Burrow win the Super Bowl. I like Joe Burrow. I'm sure every girl in America would like to see Joe Burrow win the Super Bowl because that's all their husbands. But yeah, so the Bengals, they do got some guys to pay in this offseason like T. Higgins and Jesse Bates, but I think that'll take care of itself. So I'm not too worried if I was to be a Bengals fan. Now going on to the Chiefs. Listen, this is Mahomes' third Super Bowl in 5 years. The dude, I heard on watching the Nick Wright show this week that the AFC Championship game should be renamed the Arrowhead Invitational. And while that is slightly pompous, I don't necessarily totally disagree with that. Mahomes every year as a starter has hosted the AFC Championship game, which I don't believe had ever been done from the Kansas City Chiefs franchise. And Mahomes has done it 5 times in a row. What does that tell you about Mahomes? I've been on record multiple times saying that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. I am not changed on that stance. I also think that he will and he can become the greatest quarterback of all time over Tom Brady. I mean, this is his third Super Bowl. He has a chance to have 2 Super Bowls in his first 5 years. That puts him on fantastic pace. And I understand Super Bowls aren't everything. Super Bowls aren't the moniker for how great you are as a quarterback, or else, Dan Marino wouldn't be a Hall of Famer, and Trent Dilfer wouldn't be Trent Dilfer. So I understand Super Bowls aren't everything, but Super Bowls help, and they do. And having another one would be great for Mahomes' legacy. But I'm not going to play is he on pace for the GOAT? I'm not going to play that game just yet. I'm going to watch the Super Bowl. I'm going to see what happens. Then I'll kind of further analyze it. So a couple of things I want to say about this Super Bowl that make it very interesting for me. Again, like I said, Mahomes maybe could get his second title, second MVP. That would be great as well. But I believe, as I've said previously, that Mahomes is going to win the MVP award this year. Will he be the first regular season MVP award winner to Super Bowl champion in the same year since Kurt Warner? Because there's kind of been a curse. You've had a lot of MVPs in the regular season lose the Super Bowl, like Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, a lot of those guys. So We'll see. Peyton Manning did it in 2013. So we'll see if he is cursed like those other guys, or if he can go ahead and break that curse and become the double crown. Um, I think of the most interesting part of this Super Bowl from a storyline perspective is Andy Reid. Andy Reid coaching in the Super Bowl against his former team. Now, if you guys remember, um, Andy Reid was fired in Philadelphia because he couldn't take that next step and consistently win big playoff games and consistently go to the Super Bowl. He did go to one Super Bowl with the Eagles. They got their asses blown out by the Patriots. So kind of ironic that then when he was gone, the Eagles ended up winning the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Um, so and then obviously Andy Reid has been fantastic with the Chiefs. He's won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. He broke his career stump in the playoffs and won that Super Bowl with Mahomes against the 49ers. And then obviously his team won the Super Bowl in 2017, coming back in this year. So it's kind of for Andy Reid, this has to be a very surreal moment. His old team versus his new team. Obviously, you got the battle of the Kelsey brothers, Jason Kelsey, who's the center for the Eagles, and Travis Kelsey, who was the tight end for the Chiefs. You guys knew that. Jason was coached by Andy Reid, so Jason is also going against his old coach. And I think, to see the brothers in the Super Bowl is going to be great. I saw a tweet. Jason Kelsey had tweeted, "I'm ending my Chiefs fandom today" or something, like just so funny. Like, what a moment for those guys, and what a moment for their parents. I mean, how cool would that be to have two sons playing in the Super Bowl on opposite teams? Then again, it's like, who do you root for? Do you go like what the McCourty parents did with the halfway jersey? Like, what's kind of the move there? So, pretty funny. I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to their podcast because I'm a frequent listener of their podcast, and their podcast is awesome. They give a lot of great insight. They tell a lot of funny stories. They are just great personalities. So to hear them now be against each other in the Super Bowl, because the Chiefs and the Eagles, they haven't played each other this year, right? Obviously they didn't play each other in the playoffs, but to hear them now get ready for the Super Bowl, I mean that's great. I mean their podcast that they're gonna make before the Super Bowl, if they make one, or before or after the Super Bowl, whatever the next episode they make, it's gonna crush. It's gonna be one of the greatest podcast episodes ever. I actually just put this morning when I was doing my prep for this episode, I went into the channel, I put my notifications on for their video so I could see it at first, which is a great reminder that if you are enjoying this video, you should put your notifications on for me so you don't miss any of my videos. But I put my notifications on because I want to watch the episode as soon as it drops. I want to watch that episode literally as soon as it drops. So very, very excited for that. And I can't wait to see what happens in the Super Bowl. I'm very excited for a good game. I'm going to save my predictions. I'm going to save my analysis. I'm going to save all that. I'm just going to focus on the NFC AFC Championship game today. But very, very excited for the Super Bowl. Like I said earlier in this video, I was right. My prediction was Chiefs Eagles for the Super Bowl, and I was right on that. So I was going back and forth actually with the Bills or the Chiefs, but I did lean Chiefs because Mahomes is just that guy. So very happy about that. But yeah, so that was kind of the AFC and NFC Championship game weekend. We have one more game of football and then 6 to 7 months of nothing, which is very sad. However, I will let you know that I will be making videos throughout the off season. I'll be making draft content. I'll be making content, prediction stuff for next year. I'll be making everything. I'll be making any videos on any news that drops. We do look like we have a big off season in terms of the trade, in terms of the draft. So make sure to stay tuned for that. I'll be making sure to get you guys a lot of content this off season, and then obviously going into next season, I'll be making as much content, recapping the games, everything as much as I can. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But let's now go ahead and talk about the coaching this week. All right, now to get into some of the news before I kind of wrap this video up. I think the biggest piece of news that came out in the last few days, there's kind of two big pieces of news. The first one being that I believe that it is all but done that DeMeco Ryans is going to be the next head coach of the Houston Texans. As I mentioned before, the Houston Texans job is enticing because of the draft pick, because of kind of some of the young guys on defense like Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie. But for DeMeco Ryans specifically, I mean, that's where he played the bulk of his NFL career. So kind of a very surreal moment to be a player and then less than kind of 10, 15 years later, go ahead and be the head coach. I mean, that's just awesome. Can you imagine if, Mahomes was the Chiefs head coach like 10 years after he retired? Like that's just really cool. So obviously with the 49ers losing yesterday, he's kind of got everything to like wrap up and take care of some other responsibilities like end of the season stuff with the 49ers. And then he has another interview with the Texans today. And from what I just read on Twitter from Ian Rappaport, assuming all goes well, it is very likely that DeMeco Ryans will be named the next Texans head coach. The other big piece of news that came out today was that the Cowboys and offensive coordinator Kellen Moore have mutually agreed to part ways. Now, I do understand the frustration of some Cowboys fans, but at the same time, the Cowboys offense has been really good the past 2 years. And sometimes in terms of offensive coordinators and play callers, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So now Mike McCarthy will be handling the play calling duties for Dallas. Kellen Moore will be seeking employment elsewhere. The running theory on Twitter so far that I've seen is that Kellen Moore will go ahead and be the offensive coordinator for the Chargers, which to me makes a lot of sense. Obviously Joe Lombardi, get his ass out of there. But, I think Justin Herbert really needs that great offensive mind to fully unlock him. Brandon Staley he's okay. He's a good head coach in my opinion. But he's not an offensive guy. You could argue he's a good coach. You could argue he's a bad coach. But regardless, he's not an offensive guy. And when you have a guy like Justin Herbert, I feel like you really need a good, solid offensive mind to help mold him and to help make him as good as possible. Brandon Staley's not doing that up until this point. So Kellen Moore is theorized to be going to the Chargers. And then Arizona is now interviewing the defensive coordinator of the Bengals. I think he's done a fantastic job all year. I don't think the Bengals defense is totally stacked with talent, but I think he makes the most out of it. And so that's some of the kind of coaching news going on today. If you guys had anything else you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed. Like I said earlier, subscribe. And that'll be it for me today. I'm recording this on Monday morning at about 10 o'clock. I'm hoping to have it out in a few hours. So I want to have that fast turnaround for you guys, less than 24 hours after the games. So yeah, I'm trying to get this done for you guys, and I will see you in the next episode. I have a video coming out tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned for that, and then I'll have a few other uploads this week. See you guys. Thank you for listening.